The topic which is there is in line with what we have been talking about. I mean, what I spoke of and what Mr. S.V. Nathan also was trying to elaborate. Preparing for tomorrow. So I would not go into introducing the panelists because they've already done that, and I think they have done it really well. But let me begin with going straight to the topic. And I'm not going to be talking about, what are the priorities of a CHRO, we've been knowing that. But what are the new priorities of a CHRO? Are there any emerging priorities that have taken precedence over anything else that we've experienced in the path? Especially when we were talking about the challenges that we're facing in terms of trying to get the workforce back. What are the priorities or the emerging priorities of a CHRO? Let me begin with AYASKANT. Why don't you begin with it?
Thank you, Mr. NARULA, and thank you so much, Business World, for the warm invite. Very, very interesting question, I must say. I would kind of define and divide this into 3 or 4 key areas for us, right? One massive focus area, which is going to emerge and has already emerged to some extent, is shifting from learning to application of learning, right? I think that's one major area because fundamentally when one looks at the principles of learning, it's about knowledge, skills, and attitude. But primarily it's also about knowing the ability to apply that knowledge and therefore then also the skill. So therefore, as an organization, how does one create an environment so that one is able to teach people, its employees, in terms of how does one apply that learning into a real life scenario? Because that's becoming a critical differentiator. The second important thing, I think Nathan talked about it. I missed your session, I'm so sorry, but I think the entire focus on well-being, that's kind of really emerging as a massive theme. Probably COVID got all of us a lot more sensitive towards it, but be it physical well-being, financial well-being, emotional well-being, all those 3 areas, and therefore the focus on ensuring that there is enough ecosystem at play to create a safe workplace for environment for our employees. That's becoming an important area. And last but not the least, the whole aspect of aligning employees with the purpose of the organization in a hybrid framework. And I think that's the other important challenge that all of us are kind of grappling with at an organizational level. Closer home to the function, I think it's about how do we embrace tech, especially more so AI tech, into all the key areas, right? And for me, the way at least I look at tech, it's about a mindset as well. So for example, in my role, am I thinking about tech in terms of how can I apply tech in HR ops, how can I apply tech in recruitment, how can I apply tech in learning and development, so on and so forth. In my own mindset as a leader, that's becoming an important shift. So those are emerging areas that are kind of coming up.
Thank you, AYASKANT. CHHAVI, do you have any comments on, what are the things that are emerging? And also, what I'm very keen to know from you and AMARPREET also is that why did it take a pandemic for us to realize that we need to focus on the wellness of our employees? Why is it an afterthought? How can we become proactive in our, our thought process of what is it that we could do for the employees from a human mindset point of view?
Yeah, so I think, see, when it comes to employee well-being, it is mostly about, we already used to have certain policies in place which maybe were never used. For example, sabbatical leaves, we all talk about it, but the moment any employee applies for sabbatical, the all hues and cry comes over, right? Why? What has happened? Or what is the need for that person to go on sabbatical? What will happen to the role now? What will go for that position will go vacant for if the sabbatical is for 6 months and so on. So I think, again, as you said about the mindset, so that mindset, it has shifted, but not where it is required. Still, people are grappling with whether I should take a break or I should continue, because that break will be seen in my resume, not a very enticing thing, or the recruiters will question me, why you did that, and whether I should really apply or even be vocal about it that yes, I did that. So that small thing which has been in place maybe for certain ages or were lying in the policy document but never people availed it. I think more and more communication around it, and even the employees who are availing that needs to be encouraged more. Second thing is on the very specific, or I'll say personalized well-being programs are also very important now. Though we know why COVID has given us a jerk that yes, a thought has to be given to our own well-being. And also, the recent outage that has happened, that also given us a nudge to see that whether we are not 100% relying on the technology front as well, we need to have a business continuity plan in place. In case something happens, do we have human decision making in place? That is also very important. And when I said on personalized well-being programs, even our organization has certain programs like smoking cessation program or diabetes reversal program, which are, very common lifestyle diseases which have cropped up, but it does impact if any person goes through it, and the impact on the overall health of that person becomes very important to look into it. Yeah.
AMARPREET, would you?
Thank you, Harbinder, and thank you everybody for having me here. I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is AMARPREET and I head the HR function for AstraZeneca India. When we say pre-COVID and post-COVID, AstraZeneca today needs no introduction, thanks to the vaccination, which, of course, the country has experienced. But having said that, I think you're right in a way, when we say the space of trying to evaluate that it was COVID that, led all of us or forced all of us to think in that direction that yes, well-being is important. Yes, we have to look after that very, very important agenda. And to be hand on heart, to be fair to all of us, I think we did prioritize that post-COVID. We did not really think of that as much. It was pretty much there on the policies. It was pretty much there in terms of the platter. But today, the manner in which it has come through as a curated form of a design program, it's called Celebrating You in AstraZeneca. And, like you were mentioning, it of course focuses on all dimensions and all aspects of well-being, whether it is, your mental well-being or your financial well-being. All different aspects are taken into account, physical well-being and, pieces like that. But keeping that aside for a moment, because we did, of course, speak on well-being, with my fellow panelists, I think another very, very important priority for all of us as we move forward into the future is a space of revisiting, recrafting, rethinking on our policies. They have to be progressive, they have to be forward-looking, and in order to look at what the future has in store, it is so important that we keep visiting them as frequently as, let's say, once in 6 months or once a year, to go back and revisit whether they are already outdated, whether they're making sense to the newer generation, whether they're making sense to your new talent demographics within the organization or not. So I think paying that attention as an HR leader, as an HR fraternity, is a very, very important space where you are able to recraft them, rethink that are they making good sense and are they relevant today, or are they just the same age-old, leave policies and like CHHAVI was mentioning, the sabbatical policies. What else is needed, and are we able to be relevant in the workforce or for the workforce of today? So I think that's another very important priority.
Harbinder, if I may just take
please.
30 more seconds. I loved your question in terms of why. I think the reason why, and my personal view, is because as a community, we are eternally hopeful. We always believe good things are going to happen to us.
Yeah.
I think what COVID made us feel that we're all vulnerable. Everything bad, which is not in our control, can happen to us. We could get hurt in unimaginable ways, and that got people thinking.
Got it. I think that's a very valid point. CHHAVI, tell me one thing. I mean, you're talking about emerging strategies. What is it that we could do for our people? And post-pandemic, people became a priority over work, right? But at the end of the day, all our strategies need to be aligned to the business goals for which the employees have been employed. So how do you think, as a HR head, would you align what you are doing for the people to the goals that they need to align with so that the company is progressing?
Thanks for that question.
It's working so.
It's fine.
So I think the first and foremost, need for HR leaders to align even HR strategy with the organization goal is to fully understand the organization metrics or business metrics, understand what the business is into. That is the foremost requirement for any HR leader to get into. You have to understand the operating procedures, the competitive landscape, the buyers, the end users of the business, etc., to get into or to understand where the business is going towards. That is the first. The second, I would say, it is also about the people analytics that can be used that actually make or empower HR leaders to make impactful decisions when it comes to people. And third, it is about the communication cadence. So, the more the communication, which is well-established communication rhythm, that has to be clear, consistent, and it has to mostly come from top down when it's about, aligning with the business priorities. And the more you do it, the more employees are aware of where we as a business are moving towards. And, no one team has to do that in that sense. When all the when all the business leaders along with HR leader come together and collaboratively gives the same message, I think that makes the, case very strong that where we need the change and move ahead. And last is, I think, which AMARPREET has also said, is about the continuous feedback. It's very important that while you are doing so, you also keep on taking the feedback from your employees so that you know how you are making the progress, whether it is in line or whether we are deviating somewhere, or it is too much overwhelming on employees, or whether we have to see the pace and the phase of making that alignment.
Yeah.
Can I just maybe add an example to what she's shared and, just share that interesting perspective? While I see it's tough to hold the attention of the audience, especially after Nathan sir's wonderful keynote, but I do want to take an example and I want your attention on this one. An example of, from an AstraZeneca's perspective, exactly on the point of how do you as HR leaders align from a business strategy perspective. When we talk about our organization, the clear ambition or purpose of AstraZeneca is to be pioneers in science. There's a longer purpose and an ambition, but I'll just hold on to this word, which is called pioneers in science. Number two, one of the values of AstraZeneca is that we follow the science. Now, when I say something like this, as an HR leader, it is so important for us within the function to be able to understand that science, first of all. What is that science? What are those therapy areas? What is the molecule? What is the targeted therapy? What is it really going to do? How will it impact the patient's life? And what can it transform in terms of the patient outcome? If I'm able to correlate, if I'm able to speak the language of science, even if I'm not a science student, I think that's what makes the cut for us as HR leaders. And that's what makes the cut when you're able to speak that language, have that dialogue, and be present in a chamber of a doctor and have a dialogue about an AstraZeneca molecule or a therapy which is going to treat and impact a patient's life in such a way that you are able to have that same discussion and at the leadership table or at a chamber of a doctor. That's what will transform your own respect in the eyes of a business leader, and then they start seeing value in what can you contribute. Because when you speak that language of science, you'll be able to understand where those challenges are as a healthcare professional or as an individual, and transform that into reality, transform that into those people priorities which are really needed to meet those outcomes. You spoke about communication, CHHAVI, and are we able to communicate value? And when I say communicate value, that value is in the space of those outcomes, or in the space of financial performance, or in the space of matrix. But at the end of the day, are we able to communicate value in such a way that will impact the lives of patients, and not just, an element of business, but an element of end outcome or end ambition within the organization. So if you're able to connect the dots to that last level of ambition and purpose of an organization, that is what, brings respect to every HR leader, every HR member on a business table, I would say.
I'm so glad that you brought it up, because I can't agree with you more on this. Being a non-medical, non-science background, having to interact with healthcare leaders, I've realized the importance of this.
You can imagine talking about an oncology product and, being awestruck at the kind of, conversation that can happen by your business leader with regards to a similar situation or scenario.
AYASKANT, we are talking soft skills, right? And we were talking about the importance of data and helping understanding HR analytics to make decision for the HR field. What are some of the more emerging, innovative ways of attracting talent and being able to retain them in today's day and age? I mean, the challenges are very, very different from what we've seen in the past.
So I think 2 or 3 areas are critically emerging, right? Because this is an area which is continuously emerging, changing. I think first and foremost, the use of tech to engage with a candidate right through the process of the interviews, to kind of going through the process itself, even before offer making. So really making the person feel important, special, how the person would fit into your organization, the potential career path, so on and so forth. But talking about it upfront and giving that experience with regular nudges, I think that's becoming an important area of using tech.
Correct.
Right, from a scale perspective. Second is really ensuring that when it comes to onboarding of an individual who is joining us, really making that part very, very special. Onboarding, especially to a large extent, is also moving beyond the first 2 or 3 days into more of assimilation, which is typically like a 3-month, 2 to 3 months kind of time frame. So therefore, using of buddies, using of frequent check-ins from managers, that's becoming an important part, so that the person feels settled in as far as the environment is concerned. Because the moment any person walks into the organization, whether we like it or not, the way all of us conduct ourselves, the onus of building trust lies with that individual. Right? So how do I accelerate the process of trust building for an individual?
Correct.
That becomes an important aspect as far as onboarding is concerned. Right? And then from a classical engagement perspective, that's again another place where a lot of tech is at play. Right? Given, at least for our case, given that it is a hybrid model, how can I really bring tech more, make it more interesting for people to learn what's happening at their own space? Not only that, how can I apply that?
Correct.
So let me give a very specific example here, right? So today, any leader in the company can put a technical problem, and that problem is visible to the entire organization. So anybody who feels that he or she can crack that problem, logs in, cracks it, and gets paid for it. Right? So we didn't have debates in terms of, is this, over and above CTC, what's going to happen with taxation? No. I mean, you have to kind of go beyond a traditional way of doing HR and saying that how do I reward people for solving complex problems that the organization to benefit from. Right? Those are your measures of engagement that one would kind of typically look at. And last but not the least, reskilling. I think that's becoming an important lever for any organization across the board. Let me step back and give a very simple example, since Nathan talked about tellers, right? When the ATM came over, and I'm talking about the late 80s, early 90s, and it kind of really mushroomed and became huge, the people who were most insecure at that point in time were the bank tellers.
Yes.
So what the good banks did, they actually changed that situation to an advantage. You know what's the biggest strength of a teller? Customer relationship. They really knew who was doing what. So they kind of retrained them and put them in front as customer relationship managers. Right? So that you create deposits, the deposits in the bank kind of grew. So I'm saying, therefore, looking at how do I keep reskilling my talent, keeping in mind what the future entails, becomes an important agenda.
Absolutely. You know, what I hear you say is that we have to build a team of people who are able to adapt themselves for whatever changes that we are experiencing. Amarpreet, since we're talking of hiring, attracting talent, retaining them, one of the challenges that I know that most of the pharma companies and people who are related with science are facing is that, especially in the HR, there's a lot of pressure of inclusivity, diversity, hiring more women employees. What we have seen in India is that a lot of women who take up science, they do not actually work in the field of science, right? What is it that AstraZeneca is doing or has done to create a trained, employable workforce for the future? Is there something that you're doing to prepare these women rather than, when you need them, when you are looking at hiring, then you go out to the recruiting agencies and tell them that, listen, we are looking for women, but there aren't any available or not enough available?
I think you really nailed it, Harbinder, in terms of calling out the biggest challenge in the pharma industry is to be able to hire and retain women talent, especially in the sales roles, especially in the field roles. And it's not so much about the industry, so to speak, but I think a lot of it is the kind of environment or the ecosystem, the society that we all come from, where women, a good 40-50% are so there's a right gender representation when it comes to women in science or women in STEM particularly. But when it comes to the same community of people being hired for roles or being considering options of science as their careers, that's where the significant dip happens, and it's even less than, I would say, 10 to 15% of them who consider career professions when it comes to situations or scenarios like this. Now, what are we really doing about this? In both the sides of an organization, both from a technology standpoint as well as in the sales, roles, both these have significant presence in our country, within AstraZeneca, wherein we do hire for the technology roles in science and we hire for the sales roles as well in science. Having said that, I think we've curated very beautiful, platforms and scenarios whereby we go out and have conversations and dialogue with a larger community of women in sales. These are segregated, segments of, channels wherein we have dialogues and discussions and talk about what is it as a, a day in life of a sales rep. What is it that, when we look at girls in these kind of roles and scenarios or situations, what kind of, benefits or flexible work models are available in order to help women come and look at careers like this. So while, you need that external pool to be available and something that can get attracted within the organization. Similarly, in-house, when we talk about people internally, the change in mindset, there are dialogues and discussions that happen on the leadership tables with the manager community and talk to them about what are some of the, not just the benefits, I would say, what is the flavor, how rich can you make your entire, workforce by ensuring that there are women on the table who are also participating in these dialogues and discussions with the, sales organizations or with the HCPs that we have, which is our healthcare professionals. So that it's a two-way street. When we talk about going out into the early talent programs that have been curated, the programs for women in sales and women in tech being created. Number 3 is creating a complete shift in the mindset internally to make sure that we are able to hire more women. And you'll be surprised to hear that, in the last 1 year, in the year 2023, we've moved our needle from 12% of women in the sales organization to 20% of women in the sales organization, where the industry sits at about 9 to 10%. And that's where we've been able to move the needle in terms of impact. When we talk about it and we talk about our competitor landscape, largely 9 to 10% is all that is available in terms of the sales rep. But creating that environment which is safe, which is healthy, and which is eco-friendly for our women community who go out there in the field to work and, feel connected with the organization. So that's the kind of needle movement that has been done in under 12 months at AstraZeneca.
Shall
I
we
would
let-
like to add
Yeah,
on
please.
this, please. I am also the DEI leader for Tata AIG, and the similar challenge. Women in sales, especially, we are a very frontline sales-heavy workforce that we have, and we see a huge churning in that workforce. And given that, yes, we have good females in the front lines, but however, when it comes to high opportunity markets, which are very remote locations, there we face a huge challenge even to hire female employees. Now, talking about how to, even grow them. So once they are in, what are we doing with the current female workforce? So there are few things that we do. One is on the mentorship program that we offer them. That comes from women leaders across Tata companies. So the women who have maybe 10 plus years of work experience, they mentor women who are maybe at the entry level or who have just 2-3 years of work experience, and they see a huge benefit out of it. Second is there is also a program which is laid out for a few weeks, in which we try to that is mostly curated for our top performers, female top performers, and that is for making the shift in their mindset, that why don't you aspire for those leadership positions. And we have seen a stagnant percentage when it comes to moving from maybe middle management to senior management positions. And that is where this program is basically to have that mindset and make them stand tall, or speak for themselves and aspire for those challenging roles and move ahead, not only be complacent enough in the middle management roles. So these two things, I would say, has made a difference, and we have seen a shift, though it is a gradual movement. But yes, we are looking at it for a long-term perspective. It will be a definitely huge hit.
Awesome. Instead of keeping the questions from the audience at the end, I've got about 10 more questions to ask them, but I don't think we will have the time. But I don't want to lose the opportunity. If you have any question, we should take one question before I ask them my next question. Is there any yes, ma'am.
So my question to AMARPREET ma'am. Ma'am, why did UK government stop A2 corona vaccine in UK?
It's not an HR question, but would you want it?
Because the HR need to look from the customer front as well, as ma'am rightly said.
So,
Keep it brief.
Okay. So you got that note there. I think a piece that is there out in the news, a piece which is pretty much there in terms of laying out. I think the only thing I can call out is at the time when the vaccine was created, and so does any other vaccine being formulated and out there in a market in under 10 months of the time when the pandemic was hit, it all comes with the right level of detailing and right level of disclaimers. And even when you go back and look at the packaging of every vaccine, it comes with its set of disclaimers of what can it also do in terms of certain situations or pre-medical conditions. And if you can read through that, that will probably answer your questions on what was it and where it stands.
Awesome. So my next question is, something that just came into my mind while I was listening to all of you. You were talking of mentoring, guiding. It's not just about mentoring the workforce. As a CHRO, there is a lot of mentoring that is required, which is to the leadership. Unfortunately, sometimes we are not able to do so because maybe they're not receptive to listen to what you guys are wanting to tell them. You guys are getting feelers from the teams. Second thing is that there is a lot of bias that I have observed. And the bias is that if somebody is from IIM Ahmedabad, they're wanting to hire a workforce, which is the priority is IIMs and FMS, right? So there are these lot of biases that are coming in to the system, unknowingly coming into the system. And we were all talking about data-driven decision making in CHRO. How do you think this can be handled so that the role that you play helps the company create a path which is making a difference and creates a sustainable business which is growing consistently? Anyone who wants to go in for it?
So I can take that briefly. One part of your question was about, when you talk to leaders and they are your peers at the end of the day, right? Who are a part of your leadership team and let's say a part of a country leader group or pieces like that. And you are able to observe that there are challenges. You're able to observe that whether it's people challenges, whether it's alignment challenges, whether it's a culture misfit, it could be any kind of a challenge. In scenarios or situations like that, you'll also observe, I think the flip side of the story when we talk about leaders are that, there's a journey that people have traversed. There's a mindset that gets shaped over the years. When people come with decades of experience, there is a certain baggage you carry. And it is always very challenging to be able to challenge that baggage. How do you challenge it? How do you really have that dialogue or conversation on the table? The only method that I have seen that works beautifully is a scenario or a situation when you're able to have a consultative approach. And when I say consultative, it includes an element of coaching. It includes an element of not directing anything, not actually saying that this is not how it will work, but actually being a coach to that business leader and allowing that person to be able to see where the mirror is. I think that's the beauty of coaching or consulting. And if you can have that adult to adult conversation with a business leader, believe it or not, it works magic. It works like magic.
So just to build on this, right, and I have led the function for a 100% privately held organization, as well as now leading for a publicly held, which has the board, etc., and its own set of complexities. My personal experience, especially when it comes to giving feedback, good, bad, doesn't matter, to the CEO, right, who kind of is also your boss. The fundamentals around that is, have you positioned yourself as a trusted advisor of the CEO or not? Which means, what's your own credibility? What's your own track record on delivering what you have said to your teams? Do you come across as somebody who is very, very non-political? Do you come across as somebody the CEO would see as a well-wisher and not somebody who's kind of takes some information in and kind of plant it somewhere else? It's about building that belief, and that doesn't happen overnight. If I just sit with somebody and say, I'm going to coach you, it doesn't happen. Right? It's about day-to-day working. Once you get your seat on the table as a trusted advisor, trust me, across the board it happens. It happens in our daily lives. Even as kids, we take feedback from parents. And at some point, the thing switches, right? We start giving feedback to your parents. Hey, you should have done this, you should have taken your medicine on time, so on and so forth. And they get in listening mode.
I think it's that honesty of intent.
So the trusted advisor, credibility, non-political,
I think that's a
clarity of
brilliant
thought,
point.
that's what matters.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point. I think, it is important to be seen as a coach rather than you trying to coach the leader. I know the screen is blaring with times up, but I'm going to take 3 more minutes, 1 minute to each, because I that question is really, really important for everyone out here. Since we're talking of the future of HR, what is the future of a CHRO? What do you think needs to happen for a CHRO to take on the role of a CEO in the future? 1 minute each, or maybe less than that. Is that an important question for all of you? What's the future of an HR leader?
I can take it. I mean, actually, by the way, I don't have any aspiration of becoming CEO. I love HR. I've been in HR. I would retire as an HR person. Having said that, I would say, really,
that's being politically correct. That your boss is not listening.
I've told this to everybody, right? I mean, I will just say that I don't see any difference between HR and business. They're all in it together. The only thing I would say is understanding of financials, understanding of marketing becomes important. If you have the courage to win a deal, go for it.
Chavi?
Though I agree with his advice, but yes, I do aspire to become a CEO. But yes, the thing that, even what I have read recently is only 0.3% of human resources CHROs move to CEO roles. And one thing is very important, as he rightly mentioned, on the, understanding of the business metrics, and again on the P&L statement or the balance sheet that we have. Do we really understand where the numbers are coming from? And when we do have discussions on the table, with all the business leaders in place, do you also make a point, or how have you positioned yourself in such a way that they listen to you and your initiatives well collaborate with what the business, where the business wants to move? So I think to make that mark, you should, as even Amarpreet said, that, you should talk that language and you should contribute in a way where they want to listen to you. And then slowly this needle moves and they really want to even look at, CHROs to why not challenge them, or why not give them this aspiration to move ahead as CEOs.
So for me, quite similar to what AYASKANT mentioned, I don't actually aspire to be a CEO. However, I am a very strong believer of the fact that absolutely CHROs can be the CEOs of an organization. Personally, I have received 2 knocks on the door, but I did not really go for it. Not because of courage, but I think the passion that I hold for the function that I have or I stay with maybe over does the other part of the aspiration that yes, you can be the CEO as well. But I think the path can always be there where you can be a business leader and from there on to be a CEO of an organization. It is a path which is a beautiful path, a path that every HR leader, if they are absolutely passionate about a business function or an ambition, can be aspiring towards and moving towards. All that it takes is the right mind frame, the right mindset, and the right business know-how. So that's where I would leave it.
I'd like to close the conversation here. I personally believe that CHROs can make beautiful CEOs, because at the end of the day, I know as a CEO, all that we do is about people management. Inspiring people, motivating them to go achieve their business results, to make a difference in the organization, to make a difference to the teams that they're managing, to the customers that they handle. Of course, you need to upskill and reskill yourself to understand the P&L, the Excel sheets, and understanding what is important, the importance of marketing, etc. But I think CHROs would make a wonderful set of CEOs. Thank you so much for panelists to be taking out time to be with us and sharing your knowledge and insights with everyone here. A round of applause for the panelists.